Good afternoon, race fans, and welcome back to Season 2 of the Ottercar AI Racing Series. Tonight, here at Virginia International Raceway, for the Virginia is for Otter Lovers 90, round 8 of the season overall, and the final race of our current round of the playoffs. So after today, we will be seeing 4 drivers eliminated, 8 move on into the second round, and I'll tell you what, after the little bit of a disaster everyone had at the airport Hamchestershire Grand Prix back at Silverstone last week, a lot of these playoffs drivers are in a little bit of an uncomfortable position right now. Of course, Rally came in, took home the win last week as one of the only drivers to actually make it across the finish line. That will be locking them into the round of 8. So even if they finish last place here in today's event, they are locked in to the round of 8. Then coming in behind them, thirds leads the playoff point standings with 1,066 to her name. Madcap going to be just behind, 1057, followed by Ame Sakaramori with 1050. Ash and Ash are both tied together with 1039. 1035 to Dwayne Day, but then we go down to Ashley, who is the last driver currently in over the cut line right now with 1023 points to her name, and she's in a really sketchy situation right now because August, the first driver below the cut line, is a single point behind her. So it's going to be a matter of singular finishing positions here today to determine who makes it in. Especially considering behind August, limited time, only 2 points back. Chris Cox also only 2 points back from the cut line. So while the top end of the point standings for the playoffs right now pretty spread out, the bottom half is incredibly compressed together, and it could really go anyway for pretty much anyone. Call it about in the bottom 6 or so in the points for the playoffs right now. So we're just gonna have to see how things shake up here for the Virginia is for Otter Lovers 90, not to be confused with the Virginia is for Racing Lovers 150 happening later on this week. Of course, here at the lovely Virginia International Raceway, opened on up back in 1957, probably one of the most historic road racing circuits in the United States. First time Ottercar has been here, of course. Not really a whole lot of road courses in season 1 of Ottercar, but who knows? We might see this track make a return here in season number 3, depending on which car ends up winning the vote. But that is a problem for future us to figure out. And of course, you can see down there, bottom half of the track, 4,000 feet or 1,200 meters long is that straightaway heading down into that chicane. That is going to be one heck of a ride for these drivers. And of course, this track hosts all sorts of racing in the real world. No NASCAR. For all the road courses NASCAR has been to, they have not been here, and I think that's kind of a crime. I would love to see NASCAR come out to this circuit. But of course, they host SCCA's various regional series. They host Trans Am, which is kind of what we're going for here with Ottercar this season, not quite. Obviously, they host IMSA, both the Michelin Pilot Challenge and the WeatherTech Sports Car Championship. They also host the SVRA and HSR Vintage Series, and I believe the AMA motorbikes also come here and race from time to time. This track does have like 6 or 7 different configurations, but we are using the full circuit here today. 3.24 miles in length or 5.26 kilometers in length for those of you who use the gosh darn metric system. Absolutely disgusting. But regardless of that, it looks like qualifying should be just about in the books right now. It looks like a couple of drivers still making their way around the circuit. Taking a look down here at how qualifying has shaken up so far. Madcap in the 38 is currently on the pole here in qualifying, and it's not looking like anyone's really going to be contesting that time. Sure enough, most of the field has completed both their qualifying attempts and are making their way on back down to pit lane right now. Not everyone has successfully managed to post a time. Limited time, oh, you know, and oh, nope, I say that. Ash just managed to push a time on the board. There to prove me wrong, it looks like Ash is going to end up in 7th in qualifying, so that works out for him. It's still 2 drivers that have not posted a qualifying time. And of course, once again, I say that and they cross the line. All right, so it looks like everyone has now officially posted a time. So we're just going to go ahead and advance on to the next session here so we can get this show underway. Take you out of the immersion here for a moment, bring up some lovely handy dandy UI here on the iRacing.com platform, which in theory apparently is going to be getting a major overhaul sometime this year. The iRacing update UI has not changed since the game came out in 2008, and apparently they're going to be redesigning it to make it sleek and smooth and modern, and frankly, I'm a little bit terrified of what that's going to be because it sounds to me like that is going to be minimalist and gross. Regardless, qualifying is in the books, and it looks like we are not going to be getting a short parade lap for some reason. I guess iRacing just hates us today, so we're going to take you out the immersion, get these guys rolling, because this is a grand total of nearly 3.5 miles. It's going to take a while for them to pace around this track. That said, qualifying order, starting out on the pole here in the number 38 is going to be Madcap for the Blazing Drunk Drivers, who's currently third in the playoffs. The only member of the Blazing Drunk Drivers who make it into the playoffs here in that 38 machine. He's going to be starting out on the pole. It hits outside in the number 800 in the Shelter for Strays Racing Team number 800, D getting their best start of the season. Back in position number 3, that's going to be another one of the Blazing Drunk Drivers. That's going to be Queen Amatrine, sponsored by Riot Games. She is not in the playoffs here this season, but exciting to be seeing here starting off back in position number 3. Back and forth, that's going to be the 901 of Sarkin having his best start so far this season, starting off in position number 4, followed by the 777 entry of Sarah Something. Back in 6, that's going to be the Higher Development Team number 2 of Ame Sacramore. Both of the Higher Development Team drivers made their way into the playoffs. Ame is not yet locked in, but their teammate of Rally currently is locked into the playoffs right now. Back in 7th, that's going to be another playoff driver. That's the 030 of Ash, followed by the 7 of Kevin 11, back in position number 8. 9th place going to go back to the 21 of August, followed by Dwayne Day in the 4 machine back in 10th. Dwayne Day is dangerously close to the cut line in the playoffs, so Dwayne getting a top 10 start. Potentially looking forward to a decent day here today. Back in 11th, that's going to be the Shelter for Strays driver for Pav in the 12 machine, driver out of the Czech Republic, followed by the 369 of Drop Table Roster, the first of the Kill the President drivers in the lineup here today. Back in 13th, that's going to be the 818 of MF Beatus, followed by the 3 of Thirds for Shelter for Strays. Thirds, currently the highest scoring driver in the playoffs that is not locked into next season. She's going to have a very, very bad day today if she needs to, or at least if she has any risk of being eliminated from the playoffs, it's going to take a very bad day. Back in 15th, that's going to be Chris Cox, one of the drivers below the cut line in the playoffs right now in that 69 machine. He's going to have to do a really solid time here tonight to be able to get up and lock into the round of 8. Following beside them, that's the 985 of Jeremy Albertson back in 17th, followed by the 330 of Lake back in 17th. Ashley in the 88th is the driver right on the bubble of the cut line back in 18th. That's a dangerous place to be starting here today. Back in 19th, that's going to be the 1 machine of Med, followed by the 666 entry of Zoe, another driver below the cut line right now in that 666 entry, starting 20th, not the place she wants to be. Back in 21st, that's the 11 of Ash. She is not anywhere near the cut line, but starting all the way back there could be very dangerous for that number 11 machine. We're going to have to keep an eye on him and see how things shake out for him. Back in 22nd, it's the 420 of Oh You Know, followed by the 44 of Limited Time in the Kill the President team. The only Kill the President team driver that made it into the playoffs, starting back in position number 23, and he's a driver below the cut line right now. So again, very dangerous place for him to be. That's going to be Valnar for the Blazing Drunk drivers, starting back in 24th for the 776. That's going to be the 93 of Bloody Wolf back in 25. And then, ironically enough, the higher development driver of Rally, the only driver that is locked into the playoffs for the round of 8, is Rally. When I was saying that Rally can come in last place today and be fine, I was not expecting Rally to actually come in last place today and be fine. That said, green flag is up in the air here at Virginia International Raceway for the Otter Lovers 90. And Madcap is going to lead the way down into turn number 1. We do not have the timing and scoring turned on. There we go. That sorts things out here a little bit. It's going to be 2 by 2 all throughout the field behind our race leader of Madcap. Ame Sakuramori back in 5th is the second highest scoring, or at least second highest running playoff driver right now behind our race leader Madcap. Of course, all of the drivers highlighted in purple on our timing and scoring board here today are all in the playoffs right now. Madcap coming into this 3rd in the standings, so Madcap, while he doesn't need this win to lock in necessarily, he's doing pretty solid so far. As we have trouble, Queen Ametrine hitting a little bit of a rock off on the side of the track, getting launched up in the air, but she manages to keep it pointed in the right direction, that number 37 machine. Not so much for some of the other drivers. We have a couple of drivers cutting the course back there, trying to do a little bit of cheating. We saw it at the Airport Hamchestershire Grand Prix last week at Silverstone, but it seems like these shortcut these drivers are attempting are a little bit less dramatic than they were last week at Silverstone. Everyone's actually pointed in the right direction. Dare I say, we might actually complete a lap here without the caution flag coming out. A very impressive feat for these drivers. Knowing what shenanigans they got into last week at Silverstone, it seems like everyone is, at the very least, trying to take things a little bit more seriously today. As we pull up the track map here, we can see things getting a little bit spread out around the speedways. We have a couple cars off the speedway. Chris Cox has gone off the track. So has Drop Table Roster, who brings it to a stop. He gets it rolling once again, though. Chris Cox still rolling as well, but he's going to drop all the way back down to the 23rd position. We see Valnar back there also going off the speedway, way over driving Hogpen, which is really not a difficult corner, which begs the question, why are we struggling here and not in the more technical sections of the track? I mean, we see a little bit of trouble drivers had going through the snake area of 5, 6, and 7, and 7, 8, and 9 as well. Both a little bit tricky for these AI drivers, but turn 17, all things considered, is really not that hard. So I don't know why everyone's going off there, but that is exactly what they are doing. Looking a little bit further back up the front, looking down at August right now, the 21 machine, as everyone makes their way on down into turn 7, 8, and 9, that section of twists and turns as Madcap is off the track a little bit. He brings it back on, and he goes back off again. Once again, we see these drivers trying to take shortcuts, and honestly, I don't know how much I can recommend doing that. Madcap comes back up on the track, back in the 5th position, a little bit off the pace. We have a couple other drivers off as well back there. There's a little bit of a traffic jam. Rally is missing their front bumper, and it looks like we're going to be having the caution flag flying here, as we do have drivers requesting the tow truck. The caution flag flies for the first time here at the Virginia International Raceway after a little bit of a kerfuffle back in the S's through 7, 8, and 9. We saw drivers having issues there in qualifying. We saw drivers there having issues in pre-race practice before the event. Let's take a look back here, see if we can't figure out what all went down. We kind of had a bunch of different notifications all at once of drivers having incidences, so we're going to have to try and just break this down piece by piece. First, looking back at Chris Cox. So I don't think we're really involved in that incident, but we see him also taking the shortcut through the snake area. I mean, I guess evidently these drivers just are not affected by slowdown penalties, but there you see the trouble for Rally and Ashley. So we need to go a little bit further back in time here to get a better view of things. Now looking down at the 88 of Ashley, looks like this is where the drama began. Way too much speed heading down through turns 5 and 6. Tries to keep it pointed in the right direction, generally does, but then brings it to a stop. Then gets rolling again, then brings it to a stop. There's Pav also as well, bringing it to a stop, and oh, well, there's Rally. So that would do it. Again, Rally is really lucky right now to be in a situation where they are locked into the round of 8. So no matter how bad they do here today, they are good to go in the round of 8 because they won last week. currently riding on board with the driver, that number 26, as they have more than ample time to react to what's going on and simply elect not to. Truly fascinating strategies by these drivers to simply drive full force into the very obvious incident going on. So caution flag out here on the speedway for the first time here at VIR. With Madcap having the incident, he has fallen all the way back to 7th after that off track, and we're going to have Queen and Latrine. There we go. Now we have audio again after a little bit of oopsie there with our audio drivers completely crashing out on us. Just a little bit like how these Ottercar drivers are crashing out on each other as well. But it's no big deal. You get the point. It is what it is. That said, no one has come down pit lane for a scheduled pit stop, so we're just going to go ahead and shorten the length of this caution, get these drivers rolling once again. So we'll be green flag racing next time by going to be 13 to go when we cross the line. Still have plenty of time to wait for these drivers to come around this 3.2-mile circuit before we actually take the green flag. But as I was saying before I was so rudely interrupted, it is going to be Deeg and Queen Amatrine, sponsored by Riot Games, as your front row. Then it's going to be Sarah Something and August back for row number 2. Row 3 going to be getting made up of August and Kevin 11. Then we will be having Sarkin and Ame Sakuramori back there as well. Everyone, for the most part, is still on the lead lap. Everyone except Limited Time, and Rally. Looks like they are all still on the lead lap right now. Still waiting for our drivers to make their way around the speedway. These pace laps are certainly very good at taking way too long to get around the circuit, but what can you do there? But so far, the incidents troubles have been for Rally and both of them are down on pit lane getting repairs. Limited Time looks like he is back out on the racing surface, but is being scored a lap down. That's going to be Ashley in the 88, the last car on the lead lap. And I'll tell you what, with Ashley coming into today's event right on the cut line, currently being in last place nearly, not great for her. I mean, Limited Time is down there as well. Limited Time trapped a lap down, being scored back in 29th. But we still got plenty of racing left to go. Still plenty of opportunities for drivers to get themselves sorted out. And we will do the math for who makes it to the playoffs and who doesn't before we end the stream here today. So we will get word one way or another on who makes the cut and who doesn't before we advance into our second round of the playoffs. But right now, if I were really anyone in the bottom 6 of the points coming into today's event, I would be pretty dang uncomfortable. Right now, August is doing the best of the drivers coming into this race below the cut line. August being scored back up in the 5th position, up +4 from where he qualified. Then for the other drivers that are below the cut line coming into here, Chris Cox back in 23rd, Limited Time back in 30th, and Zoe back in 16th. Things really not looking good for these drivers down below the cut line coming into today's event. They need really solid performances here today to make it into the round of 8, and right now they aren't quite cutting it. Speaking of drivers not quite cutting it, that was an absolutely terrible restart by Sarah Something. She has not even gotten up to speed yet and is just completely blocking the entire inside line. Mind you, Sarah is not in the playoffs in that 777 event, 777 entry. So that might be having a little bit of an effect on the playoff series. We have a couple of drivers back here going off the speedway because of the huge checkup we had coming to the green, courtesy of Sarah Something not understanding proper restart procedures, but you know, what can you do? Back there as well, that is the 44 of Limited Time, stuck behind two other playoff drivers side by side. That is Ashley and Ash. Ash a little bit higher above Ashley in the playoff points coming into today's race, but both of them currently running back in 24th and 25th respectively. That is not any good for either of these drivers when it comes to making it into the round of 8 here at the end of today's event. A couple of drivers having issues up in the Ences again. Let's take a look down there. Zoe's off the track. There's a pile up again as Zoe brings it to a stop on the racing surface. Brilliant moves by the 666 entry, who has made it into the playoffs, trying to get that late model turned back around, and it looks like she is going to be able to. Zoe, the only driver in the playoffs by virtue of locking in with a win, who otherwise would not have had the points to make it. And naturally, Zoe right now is at the very bottom of the playoff point standings, running back in 27th now. That's not quite having the evening that she needs to be having here at VIR. We have another driver off the track. That is the 800 of Deeg off the speedway. Deeg was running up in second, and Queen Amatrine is going to make the call to come down pit lane. So that will now filter around to Sarkin being our race leader. Playoff driver Ame Sakuramori just behind in the 2 machine. Other playoff driver of Ash just behind in the 11. Ash is up plus 18 positions right now somehow. I'm not entirely sure what that 11 managed to do that, but he is currently up plus 18 from his qualifying spot in about 4 laps of green flag running. Because, of course, you can't gain positions under the yellow flag, so I'm not entirely sure what all Ash actually managed to do here to get up there, but Ash is currently came into today's event 6th in the playoff standings, so a solid run like this would be doing a big favor for that number 11 machine. Ame Sakuramori also coming into this event 4th in the playoffs, so Ame in a really solid position. But to have 5 playoff drivers up inside the top 10 right now honestly isn't all that bad, all things considered. A little bit of trouble, a little bit off track down through the S's there, both for Ash and MF Beatus just behind. MF Beatus in the 4th position, having one of the best runs that he has had so far here in the Ottercar AI Racing Series, coming into today's event last place in the regular season championship. So great to see MF Beatus out here having a decent run for once in his life. Didn't know that was possible quite out of the 818, considering everything he has been through in these last couple of events. This super late model has just not quite been sticking for him the way it has for some of these other drivers. Right on his heels, that is the number 4 of Dwayne Day, another one of these playoff drivers. Another playoff driver that is kind of dangerously near the cut line. Dwayne really needs to have a solid performance here, as does most of the playoff drivers. The only one who really has enough points to not stressed too much right now is thirds and Madcap. But if I was anyone else in these playoffs right now, if I wasn't rallying locked in to the next round, I would definitely be sweating a little bit here, especially for these playoff drivers that are currently running outside of the top 10 right now. Chris Cox, Ashley, Ash, Zoe, limited time, all having really not so great performances here today at VIR. Of course, this is the Virginia is for Otter Lovers 90. There are no Otters in the field anymore. There used to be. Ash, without knee, back in 20th in the 030 machine. Was an Otter when he signed up here for this league. Now, not quite so much. He's like a dragon or something now. Kind of fucked up if you ask me, but you know, I don't make the rules. As we see MF beat us again, cutting the corner there like it simply doesn't matter. Sarah Something also cutting the corner much more dramatically. She's going to come back up on the track full speed. Tries to bring the car to a stop. She gets back up on the racing surface. She actually successfully took a shortcut here. As Ame Sakuramori is off the speedway with a, looks like a blown motor. Ame Sakuramori might have just been eliminated from the playoffs, just like that. Caution flag is out on the speedway for damage to the tire barrier and debris from Ame Sakuramori's car. They are going to need to take the tow back to pit lane in that number 2 machine. Let's go a little bit further back in time here, see what happened to that playoff driver that came into tonight's event 4th in the playoff standings. Just way overshooting Oak Tree, hard into the tire barriers, and boom goes the front hood. It's right on board with the driver of the number 2 machine. That is absolutely catastrophic for the number 2. Couldn't get the car slowed down enough. It sounds like there was also a downshift there that might have added on into it and just lost control of the tar, over-revved the engine, and from there, not a whole lot that could be done to save it. And that puts us in a very difficult situation here because there's a very decent chance that eliminated Ame from the playoffs. I will have to see how quickly its crew can get the car repaired and get back out there, but we well and truly might have just seen Ame get eliminated. And we get word from the flagman, 10 to go here at Virginia International Raceway. Still under caution for the 2nd time here today. This time for Ame Sakuramori. Currently Ame being scored back in the 26th position. Now make that 27th. Down on the same lap as Limited Time. So Limited Time has now gained a position over Ame Sakuramori. Coming into tonight's event, Ame was 27 points above the cut line. So Ame could maybe be okay. Possibly. But it is going to be very, very close. Scary times here at VIR for these playoff drivers. Frankly, I am glad I am not one of them. That's pretty much my synopsis here for today. I am glad that I am not finding myself in their positions. That said, it does not look like there's anyone down on pit lane for scheduled pit stops, so once again we will be shortening the length of this caution. And never mind, no we're not. We have to wait another lap before we can shorten the caution down. They have not completed a full lap under yellow yet, believe it or not. So that'll give a little bit of luck to Ame Sakuramori and Jeremy Albertson, both of which are still down on pit lane getting repairs done to their respective vehicles. Rally has come back out on the track in that number 26, currently being scored 4 laps down right now. Trying to get caught up to the tail end of this field. Well, boy howdy, has this made the playoffs very complicated now. I'm not 100% certain where anyone is anymore in regards to the math on things, but that is what we're going to figure out as Rally is way off the speedway in Oak Tree right now. Again, under yellow. And speaking of yellow, it looks like most of the field is going to make the call to come down pit lane here, get some fuel and tires put on these late models. All of these look like scheduled stops. The only drivers electing to stay out, Valinar, Chris Cox, and Pav all stay out. So does Limited Time, Queen Amatrine, and Oh You Know. So I'd imagine for most of these drivers, this will be the first and only pit stop right now that they are going to be making here at VIR. Of course, we could be proven wrong at any point here, but that's what seems to be the case, as most of the field taking pretty long stops here. Everyone is in the 26 to 30 second range, which makes me think these drivers may actually all be taking tires under this yellow. I don't quite think that's necessary, but I'm not going to judge their life decisions. As we start to make our way back up to the speedway, the 44 of Limited Time will be getting the lucky dog position. It looks like Limited Time will be put back on the lead lap here. It's going to be Valinar, Chris Cox, and Pav, the three drivers who boldly have made the decision not to come down onto pit lane. You can see a little bit of nose damage on the 776 of Valinar, so it looks like he's had a little bit of trouble here today. The 12 of Pav also has a little bit of damage to the left front fender on that 12 machine. Then we have all of the blocker cars, but of course the blocker cars do not need to pit at all, and they're just here to have a good time. They've been having a really quiet time so far here in this season. With it being all road courses instead of ovals like we were expecting, the blocker cars have not quite had as much influence as they were initially planned to here in Ottercar season number 2, but they're out there. They're making their way around the speedway. They're trying their best, such as it is. And now that everyone's out of pit lane and the field is mostly stacked back up, now we will be shortening the length of this caution, going green flag racing once again, because we only got 8 laps left once we take the green. Ideally, we want as much of that to stay under green flag conditions as possible. So in your front row here, when we take the green, is going to be Valinar and Chris Cox, Pav, Oh You Know, MF Beatus, Dwayne Day, Sarkin, Thirds, Ash, Sarah Something, Madcap, and August. Your front couple of rows here. As Pav, for some reason, is hanging back here a little bit in that 12 machine. Might see a little bit of a lazy start on the inside line this time around rather than the outside line like we saw on the last restart with Sarah Something having issues. Now it looks like Pav is sort of considering getting up to his correct spot. Never mind, no he's not. He was just giving us a false sense of hope, but not quite. Of course, Pav, definitely an interesting driver to keep an eye on in that 12 machine. Back at the Why is the Canadian Anthem playing 65 at the New Hampshire Motor Speedway, we saw Pav wreck someone out for the race lead to try and lock himself into the playoffs. He was in a must-win situation. Unfortunately, came up just short of it. But this driver has proven that they can be a little bit relentless to their competitors when need be. As we have trouble back on the back of the speedway, what is going on back there? Immediately the caution flag flies once again. Something went catastrophically wrong on that restart. I'm not quite sure what all went down there, but that was a large volume of barrel rolls out of the driver of the number 38 machine. Another playoff driver who looked to be in a really comfortable situation, who now might be finding themselves below the cut line at the end of this thing. Let's take a look down here, and looks like Madcap might have found one of those strategically placed landmines around the circuit, and that potentially could be a race ender for the number 38 machine. Let's take another look down here, get another view of this for the 38. I sure do hate it when my car just suddenly explodes on me out of the blue. It's fine. It's no big deal. That happens sometimes. It's only damage to the back of the car. It's no big deal. Pretty impressive run though. I counted 6 flips there for Madcap. Maybe a little bit nausea-inducing there, but you know, it's no big deal. And limited time, that lapped car, limited time, making a big dive up to the front as everyone checked up for that incident with Madcap. Unfortunately, it looks like he's only really going to gain 1 or 2 positions there because he was mostly stuck behind lap traffic there. So we find ourselves here under caution for the 3rd time at VIR now, and now that pretty much everyone has their pit stops under their belts, I would imagine most of the field is just going to be staying out here, making their way around the track, waiting for the green flag to fly once again, and then, in a perfect world, this will be the final restart of the day. As you see down there on pit lane, the number 2 of Ame Sakuramori completely trashed the front end of that super late model. Ame Sakuramori is being scored in last place right now. That could be absolutely devastating to the driver of that number 2 machine. We may see some really unprecedented drivers being removed from the playoff here today. Madcap also back there. Madcap is being scored back in the 27th position. Was leading the field coming into this event, and now down 26 spots from where he qualified. What an event it has been so far here today at VIR, folks. Of course, a big thank you to everyone tuning in to these events and all the shenanigans that ensue with iRacing's wonderful, beautiful AI. Of course, these landmine events all started about a week before Ottercar began. In a cruel twist of fate, iRacing set up the new damage model for the super late model, which works wonderfully on the oval side of things, but here on the road courses, since the AI have a simplified physics system and don't follow how actual real drivers handle and set up their cars and all sorts of things like that, that is where all these physics issues are coming from that are jettisoning these cars up into the air and causing all of this drama. Is that these cars that are designed to run on ovals are running setups that I'm willing to bet that if I were to get into my car right now and put the setup these AI drivers were using into my car, it would fail technical inspection. And so as such, we have springs that are reaching rates they shouldn't be able to. We're having parts of the bodywork clip into the ground, and that's what makes these cars get violently launched up into the stratosphere, because evidently no one was anticipating for these cars to be run on road courses in AI races. But here we are. This is what the Ottercar community voted for season number 2, and this is what we are stuck with no matter what for the final 4 races of the season. We'll have to see, will any drivers make the call to come down pit lane this time by? If not, we will be shortening up this caution flag. And we do have a couple of takers. Chris Cox coming down, Pav coming down. Everyone else electing to stay out, and that will filter the 901 of Sarkin back up to the race lead, followed by Ash and Ash, 2 playoff drivers just behind. Then the next playoff driver is going to be the 88 of Ashley. Ashley is finding herself inside the top 10 in that 88 machine after being back at the tail end of the field earlier on in this event. I don't know how these AI drivers managed to do it, but I've seen some of these drivers be all the way back in last place and now finding themselves up inside the top 10, sometimes top 15, sometimes even the top 5. But we will let these drivers go through and do their pit stops. We have Chris Cox coming out, Oh You Know coming out. Limited Time is down there as well. And we finally see Rally coming back out on the speedway as well after a little bit of trouble earlier on. The only driver still on pit lane is the 2 of Ame Sakramori. They've got the hood put back on that number 2 machine, so Ame might not be in too dramatic of a situation. They may be able to come out back on the speedway, but they're being scored. Sure enough, Ame is going to make the call back on the speedway. Is being scored back in the 30th position, 24 spots down from where it qualified. So we're shortening up this yellow. We're going to send them back 2 by 2 here. Sarkin and Ash will be your 2 race leaders coming to the green flag this time around. That's going to be Ash Med, Bloody Wolf, Ashley Deeg, Thirds, Kevin 11, MF Beatus, August, and Lake all up inside the top 10 here. Of course, that is not including the blocker cars. The blocker cars do not count, and of course, they will be eliminated from the scoring sheet after the checkered flag flies. Going to be getting the big high five from the flagman when we go green flag racing once again. Going to be 5 to go here at VIR. Before we settle the score and figure out who will be making it into the round of 8 here in the Ottercar playoffs. Ash and Ash both in very solid positions here. If they finish where they are, they're really not in a must-win situation. A little bit further back, Ashley, who was hovering on the cut line, I think she will be okay. Thirds, of course, back in 10th right now. Thirds should be fine. So I don't think anyone up here in the top 15 in the playoffs right now is really in a must-win situation. But of course, they are still collecting points that they can use with them in the round of 8. So your finishing position, while it doesn't necessarily matter for actually locking into the round of 8, it still will be important for having those extra points to work with when the round of 8 begins. Now we've almost made it back around to the front of the speedway as we have Madcap down on pit lane right now. Has been down there for nearly 2 minutes, so not great to see for that number 38 machine, who is now being scored back in the 28th position after that cause of the previous yellow flag. You really just can't have any expectations coming into these Ottercar races. It doesn't matter how good or bad it seems like someone else will figure out a way to get around there. But green flag's back up in the air, 5 laps to go here at the Virginia International Raceway. Sark and Ash sail down into turn number 1, and Ash with a knee is going to take an early lead over the 901 of Sarkin. For the back drivers making their way around those blocker cars that started up in front of them, so they're all kind of bunched up together right now as they all make their way down into the horseshoe of turn number 1. And Ash steadily pulling away from the field right now in that number 11 machine. I don't know where he's gotten all this speed from, but he is looking pretty dang good right now. Sarkin has one of the... actually, back in the 420 machine. I don't know what he's doing back in 23rd right now. He is the fastest lap of the race by a full 2 seconds faster than any other car on track right now. And he is running back into the 22nd position right now. So I don't know what the deal is with but evidently he might have some late race speed to play with here. As we have some drivers off the track, Sarkin is off the speedway in the 901, taking some funky shortcuts over there, and that's going to have Ash and Ash, your new front runners, as now Sarkin has to deal with the entire rest of the field hot on his tail. As Ash and Ash just absolutely sail away from the rest of the field, everyone kind of having to slow up a little bit through Oak Tree for Sarkin to come back out on the speedway. And we see Deeg right on his bumper. We might be about to see Deeg make a move for the final podium position here with 5 to go at VIR. Heading down that 4,000 foot long straightaway into a very steep downhill curving section of the track. But for the time being, Sarkin is going to hang on to the final podium position, now 5 seconds back from the 2 Ashes that are leading this race. Lake back there getting pushed off the speedway a little bit. Looks like Chris Cox also going off as well. That will be putting the two of them back to the 18th and 19th positions respectively with 4 to go here at VIR. These drivers really need things to stay out in their favor. Also, now that we are within 4 laps to go, the caution flag will not be flying as this race will be ending under green one way or another. So Ash and Ash are both looking in a really solid position right now to sail away with this event as Lake goes off in turn 1 again immediately after going off in turn 17. That 330 machine not having a good time here today. Lake's had about 4 or 5 off tracks per lap pretty much so far here today. A little bit further up, Sarah Something getting some pressure from behind from drop table roster. Med back there as well getting involved in this battle as we see our front runners up on the timing and scoring map having slight flashes of going off the speedway. Kevin 11 off the track right there, trying to save it, does not able to. Nearly spins back up onto the track, but at least manages to keep it down in the grass. Doesn't cause any sort of dramatics, especially not any sort of dramatics that affect our playoff drivers. Here's the playoff driver though, Dwayne Day battling with MF Beatus and Sarah Something. Everyone now a full 8 seconds back from our race leader right now. As Ash and Ash pretty much steal the show here. Of course, there is also the opportunity for the two of them to do something a little bit stupid as well, but right now focusing back on the battle a little bit further back in the middle of the pack, battle for 5th as MF Beatus leads the way to try and take home his best ever finish in the Ottercar AI Racing Series. He's going to have a little bit of an off track there. That's going to allow Dwayne Day to make the move to get around him. Dwayne Day now up to the 5th position here in that bright lime green car. As we see Sarkin off the speedway, falling back to 12th, falling back to 14th. Chris Cox also still off the raceway. Oh, you know, also off the speedway as well. And suddenly, we see Zoe up here inside the top 10 in that 666 entry. We were giving her a whole lot of grief earlier in that micro center entry, but suddenly she's doing a-okay. And of course, Zoe was in the last place coming into this event in the playoff standings. So Zoe really desperately needs a really strong finish here. And right now battling for the top 10, 2 by 2 with thirds. August there as well. Zoe could potentially put something together here and maybe just barely skirt her way into the playoffs if she continues to have this success. We also see Dwayne Day, another playoff driver, having issues going off the speedway in that 4 machine. Pulls it back up onto the racing surface, but going to lose a spot to MF Beatus, going to potentially lose a spot to Sarah Something as well. Never mind. Big dive down into Oak Tree. Valnar off the track back there as well. Drivers really are just kind of pushing their cars all over the place as they try and scramble for position here in these final 3 laps at VIR. And the playoffs could still really go either way here. Ash and Ash, Dwayne Day, all looking like they're playing fine. Third should still be a-okay as well, but that still leaves another 4 positions for drivers to potentially make their way into the playoffs. And really this battle between thirds and Zoe is what I'm most captivated by, because Zoe here would love nothing better to get around that 3 machine and potentially set herself up for success here after having one of the worst runs all season of all of the playoff drivers. Zoe right now up, battling for the final spot of the top 10 as we get 2 to go from Barney the Flagman here at VIR. Just 6 miles or 10 kilometers of racing left to go before we crown ourselves a winner. And I'll tell you what, speaking of battles, the battle for the lead has narrowed up to 0.2 of a second. These 2 drivers have pulled away from the rest of the field by nearly 12 seconds, but it could still go either way for the race win here between the 2 Ashes. Of course, the 2 of them have been touting Ash supremacy for a while. We also have Ashley running in the playoffs as well, currently back in the 13th position. When the 3 of them got into the playoffs, they were big touters of Ash supremacy. And right now, it's looking like a very good day for drivers with Ash in their name right now. Heading down into Oak Tree, Ash with an E still has the advantage. Ash without an E just behind in the 030 machine. Let's take a moment. Let's ride on board with Ash as we go down this 4,000 foot long straightaway. Just about a car length back from the race leader here as we head through 16 and 17 to take the white flag here at VIR, but it looks like Ash with an E. Oh, Ash goes off the track. Ash is off the track, and Ash is your new race leader here. And no, he's not. He's going to make the call to come down pit lane. He doesn't have the fuel to make it to the end. So now that leaves Ash as back to our race lead here. As we see more of the field coming down, it's looking like most of the field did not take the fuel needed to make it to the end. This will dramatically shake up the playoffs. Whoever can stay out on fuel might just be the drivers who make it into the playoffs. Ash stays out. Chris Cox stays out. This might be everything Chris Cox needed to make it into the round of 8 here. As long as these drivers can make it around this speedway without sputtering out, without running out of gas, we might have just seen the playoffs get completely turned upside down on its head. Currently looking down at our race leader of Ash, who's driving like he's good on fuel. He's certainly not lifting and coasting all to try and save. There's a little bit of an off track there down in turn 7. Try and hang on to it, Ash. You just have to make one more lap around the speedway in order to lock yourself in to the round of 8. Heading down into Oak Tree for the final time for that 11 machine. Looking A-OK there. Not having a repeat of the incident Ame Sakaramori had. Around the field, it's mostly spread out. There's a battle going on between Lake and Drop Table Roster. A battle between Sarah Something and Dwayne Day. But otherwise, everyone is completely spread out around the track. And it looks like for a lot of these Ottercar playoff drivers, their fates are kind of sealed, as we have a couple of drivers going off the speedway. Third's off the track, MF Beatus off the track, Deeg off the track. And Third spins it around. Third's loops it around. That might be potentially the end of her playoff run, unless she has enough points as a cushion to work with. That's going to drop her all the way back down to 18th, 19th. Will we see her go all the way back to 20th as she comes back onto the track? Limited time back there trying to get up there. As we have trouble for Ash. Ash ran out of fuel. Ash does not have the fuel to make it to the end, and there is a big stack up in turn 17, and Pav out of nowhere. It's not going to get him into the playoffs, but Pav will be taking home a race win here in Ottercar season number 2. Ash, Bloody Wolf both not having the fuel to make it to the end. They went on a gamble trying to fuel save, and it just didn't quite work out for them. Since neither of these drivers are going to cross the line, Ash and Bloody Wolf will be scored as the final drivers on the lead lap now, which should cycle them all the way back to 25th and 26th, which is including the blocker cars, so probably closer to 21st and 22nd. That could be disastrous for these two Ottercar playoff drivers. I'll tell you what, race fans, Octave, if you're just tuning in, I have some terrible news for you. Some awful, terrible, no good, very bad news. As I realized that our chat was not turned on for the entire race. Oh well, it happens sometimes. What an event it has been here at VIR. We're gonna have to wait here for a few moments for the race to officially be scored as over before we can take a look down at our race results and start doing the math for who does and does not make the cut into the Ottercar playoffs. And it looks like the race is now being officially scored as over. So let's take a look down here, see our official race results as they stand. Pav, in an amazing twist of fate, manages to take home the race win after absolutely pretty much gaming the system here. Chris Cox finishing back in the 69 machine, a driver that came into this event below the cut line, walking away with a second place finish. I think Chris Cox might be able to make it in off of that. Queen Amatrines being going to be scored back in third, followed by Oh You Know and Ash in the 030 back in the fifth position. Dwayne Day going to be going back in sixth, followed by Sarah Something, MF Beatus, Deegan drop table roster to make up your top 10 here. Zoe going to be finishing back in 11th, followed by Med, Ashley, August, and Kevin 11, your top 15. Thirds will bring it home back in 16 with limited time in 17th. Lake back in 18th. 19th going back to Sarkin in the 901, followed by Ash, who just ran out of fuel on the final corner of the final lap in that 11 machine. Back in 20th as he was able to cross the start-finish line. Back in 21st, that's going to be Bloody Wolf, who also was unable to cross the start-finish line after running out of fuel on the final corner of the final lap. Then back in 25th, we have Valnar and Jeremy Albertson. In 27th, Madcap, who looked poised to take home the race win here, finds his way back into the 28th position, with Ame Sakramori finishing just behind, and then Rally, who was fortunate enough to lock themselves into round 8 of the playoffs last week at Silverstone, manages to come home in last place and still make it into the playoffs. Now that said, before we call it quits here for this evening, it's time to do a little bit of math and figure out how things will be shaking up for the round of 8 in the playoffs. So let's take a look down here, see how things finished up. Take a look right here. I have to break out some spreadsheets here to do a little bit of math to figure out for sure who made it where. Alrighty. You know, we'll go ahead, we'll add in our qualifying music from our Monday Night League. So you'll have something to listen to while we deliberate over this. Turn it down here a little bit. Get some little bit of dramatic music to go while I figure out the spreadsheets for who makes it into the playoffs and who does not. So going to take a little bit of a moment here to get it figured out before I know one way or another. But I think it's going to be turned upside down on its head, all things considered. That was an absolutely crazy event here. Now we need to push this into Sim Racer Hub, so then we can pull the points off of it into our spreadsheet and figure out who is where, who is fortunate to make it into the playoffs, who is not. As I was not not quite anticipating anything in that race to go the way that it did. But that's the joy of Ottercar. These drivers know how to turn a perfectly kosher and family-friendly racing event and turn it upside down on its head. Alright. So we've got all of that taken care of, it looks like. So now we have to go over to our handy dandy little spreadsheet here, and then we will be able to know. In the meantime, thank you all for tuning in to everything that's gone on here today. Been quite the event. So let's see how things are shaking up here. Let's see. Got that over there. I don't really have anything good to say while I'm sitting here trying to do math. I can't think and work at the same time. That's not how this works. We really did just kind of have the playoff drivers get turned upside down in terms of their points positions coming into this event than where they actually finished at. All right, let's see how things shake up here. Sort by. All right, so we have our totals. Rally thirds: Ash, Madcap, Dwayne Day, Ame Sakuramori, Ash with an E, and Chris Cox make it into the playoffs, which means Ashley, August, Limited Time, and Zoe will be our 4 drivers eliminated and will not be progressing into the round of 8. So next week, we go into the round of 8. Our remaining 8 drivers will have their points totals reset except for the playoff points that they have earned so far. And they will be trying again for another 2 rounds. First at Langley, then at, I believe, at the Charlotte Roval. Before finally we bring it down to 4 final drivers for the Ottercar Grand Clam Championship at the Sebring International Raceway. That is bound to be one heck of an event. But for now, that's just about all we got here for the Ottercar AI Racing Series. Thank you all for tuning in to whatever the heck just happened here in this race. It has been one heck of a show, and I will see you all next week. Have a good evening, race fans.